All right, let's talk Houston Texans here for a little bit. Look, obviously, the Texans took the NFL world by storm when they acquired Stefon Diggs from the Buffalo Bills last week. And recently, there have been reports about how the Texans are restructuring Stefon Diggs' contract, making it a short-term deal. Kind of got some interesting analysis on both sides of the argument. A lot of people are concerned with what the Texans may have done here. But I think when you actually dig deep into it and think about it, it's actually a really smart, savvy move by Houston for a number of different reasons. But let's get into the article first, courtesy of NBC Sports, and then we'll go about it more in detail on the other side. From the report, when news broke that the Bills were trading receiver Stefon Diggs to the Texans, one of the first questions became whether and when Diggs would want an adjustment to his contract. He got one quickly, in the form of a raise for 2024 and the elimination of 2025, 2026, and 2027. It's a great outcome for Diggs, who ends up seeing his compensation for this year increase from $8.5 million to more than $22 million, with the added incentive of being in his first ever contract year. That's important. So why do it? The answer is fairly obvious. They want the best possible version of Diggs. They want none of the little things the Bills tolerated until it became one big thing. If the Texans draw a difficult early season schedule and struggle to win, and or if Diggs ends up not getting as many passes as he wants, the promise of free agency might cause him to resist any of the things that the Bills had to endure. All right, so this is obviously an interesting strategy the Houston Texans used, shorting Stefon Diggs' contract to essentially a one-year deal. I think it's a pretty smart move. Miles, I know you got some insights as to why as well, but first, Texans fans in the comment section below, now that all the details have been fleshed out, I want you guys to grade this acquisition of Stefon Diggs. Now that you know the contract, the way it's been structured, what you had to give up to get him. Do you love the deal? Give it an A. Do you hate the deal? Give it a C-. Do you think it's kind of solid? Maybe just a B? Whatever it is, grade this acquisition, everything and all, in the comment section below. But Miles, give me your thoughts on the situation with the Houston Texans and Stefon Diggs.
Yeah, Nick, I think it just shows that the Texans are kind of thinking ahead of the game on this one. I think it's a really great move. So if you don't think it is, hear us out first, because I think there's some really great stuff to this. And first, I'm going to talk about what you get in a guy like Stefon Diggs. Obviously, a little bit older. He's 31 years old, but he's an elite playmaker, an elite wide receiver in today's game. Easily arguable top 3, top 5 type of guy. He is a team-changing kind of player. So with that, that is all very good. But if you look at the flip side of stuff, he does have a history of bringing some negativity, some toxicity, some locker room troubles to teams as well. You go through the time with the Bills and the Vikings, and you see that this is a guy who, as good as he is, these guys are willing to move off of him because of some struggles he's put up in their locker rooms. That being, if they lose a game, if he doesn't get as many targets or whatever he thinks he deserves in those games, then there's some cryptic tweets, Instagram posts that come out, all kinds of stuff, throwing subtle shade at teammates or the team itself. Then, on top of that, you see that Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs allegedly got into it week 1 of last season. Nobody really talked about it until now. But this was a thing where Stefon Diggs didn't really think he was being utilized enough. He was being kind of, wishy-washy on the sidelines, being woe is me type of deal. And Josh Allen's kind of like, hey man, it's just one game. You need to grow up. You need to figure out, we got a rest of the season to play. After the first game of the season, you can't give up now. So that's one other thing we've seen is Stefon Diggs kind of give up on a season if he doesn't think that they're going to do very well. And the third thing that they've seen is the comments by Stefon Diggs saying that he wanted to leave the Bills because he didn't believe that they could beat the Chiefs. Obviously, for the Texans, that's good for you because that means he thinks you can beat the Chiefs. But you don't want a player on your roster to say, wow, we're getting continually beat by this team. I'm just going to leave and figure something else out. You want a guy on your team to say, hey, we're not winning. I need to get better. The team needs to get better. We need to figure out what we need to do to win. A true team player, but he's been selfish a little bit on his part over time. Now, how did the Texans go about taking care of that? First of all, they raised his contract substantially from $8.5 million to $22 million. And that $22 million is more he would have made the 3 following years at $18 million, $19 million, and $17.5 million, respectively, in 2025 to 2027. And also, they've taken those years out, leaving him on his first ever contract year, which makes you know that players always try to play a little bit harder. They want to show the best versions of themselves on their contract years. You are going to set yourself up by showing Stefon Diggs you value him by giving him a lot of money. $22 million is a ton of money in the wide receiver market, but also showing that, hey, you need to play your best because you now are on your contract year. You've never been there before. You need to play your best ball, be the best version of yourself, be the best teammate, the best locker room guy on this team, because you're playing for your future contracts as well. And I think this is just a really smart move by the Texans, showing they're thinking ahead and they're trying to combat any potential struggles with this move.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got a completely different approach. I think this move is, and the way they structured Stefon Diggs' contract here is much larger than Diggs, right? It's all about an indication to their competition, the Houston Texans competition, that they are in their title window and they should be seen as a championship destination. If you look how different teams structure the contracts and negotiations, it's all about generally what phase they're in, right? What do rebuilding teams do? Teams basically tanking. They cut everybody, they just kind of front load all the dollars just to get it all off the books, build up their salary cap space. They basically sign nobody to any deal, short or long term. If you're rebuilding, if you're on the way up, that's when you'll see teams sign massive long-term deals, 4, 5, 6-year deals, because they understand it's a long process. They want to give that player a lot of security as they work through the rebuild. As the team gets better and better as they go through the rebuild, the length of the contract generally shortens, right? It uses, okay, we're now winning 8 games, we're now winning 9 games. Let's do 2-year and 3-year deals because I think we're getting close to our title window. Once you become a championship team, that's when you're trying to go after these veterans, these guys like Diggs, these guys north of 30, and say, okay, we want you here for 1 year, maybe 2 absolute max, 1 year in Diggs' case, because we want you to come here and chase a championship. That's what it's all about. That's, I think, what really Stefon Diggs wants. I mean, he wants the money and the targets, of course, but all these players, they're competitors. They want to win championships. And the way you do that is you follow the Patriots dynasty model. The Chiefs have been doing this. The 49ers do this. The Baltimore Ravens do this, where they get these veteran players north of 30, played a lot of football, bring them in on 1-year deals to help make a deep playoff push, help make a run to the Super Bowl. Because the reality is, in those big games, you rely on those veterans, those guys who have been there before, the guys north of 30 who have seen 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 playoff games before, guys who have played a lot of football to help you in those big time moments, right? That's what the Rams did a number of years ago as well. They signed a lot of veterans, of course, to short-term deals to help propel them to a Super Bowl title. And that's what the Houston Texans are doing here. Number one, they correctly view themselves with the emergence of C.J. Stroud and the talented core and D'Amico Ryans, of course, as being in a Super Bowl championship window. I think they are. By understanding that and giving Diggs that 1-year deal, they're allowing themselves to try and capitalize on it, but also they're sending a message to the rest of the NFL and other veteran players saying, listen, you can come here, you can come to Houston and ring chase. You may want to consider going to the Chiefs. You may think the Ravens or the 49ers are potential options if you're ring chasing. But right there with them, you should consider the Houston Texans franchise, because Stefon Diggs considered that, right? The Houston Texans considered themselves that. And the reality is they are. With C.J. Stroud, we all know he's a budding, emerging, already, you could argue, a superstar in the National Football League. So I think this is what we're seeing from Houston. This is the important takeaway, is that they're sending a message to the rest of the NFL saying, we are in a championship window over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. If you want to come here and ring chase, we are in that phase. Come here. We'll give you that 1-year deal, favorable deal, just like the Patriots of old, just like the Chiefs, and let's go after a title, right? That's what the Texans sent here with this move and this message. I think it's a smart, savvy strategy. You got to recognize the situation you're in to excel, and they obviously do that, so great on them. And I think this will be the first of probably many veterans, big-name veterans, over the next few years that want to come to Houston on short-term deals to try and get this franchise a Super Bowl.